You are now listening to Femme podcast with Tessa Markle
and Carolina Alvarez.
Femme.
Hey, fam. Welcome to the next season of Femme podcast. We've been taking a short break for post-production for Sync, but we have more episodes for you releasing every week. If you are a new listener, check in with us every Friday. We've got new episodes, sometimes just Carolina and I. Sometimes we have fantastic industry professional guests. And today we have the lovely Taylor Morden, who is introduced to us through the Geekscape network, which is the network that we are on. If you guys aren't aware of it, check out geekscape.net. Got a ton of amazing shows. And Taylor, we realized when we were introduced, had a documentary called The Last Blockbuster, so the film was already out, but when he was in the crowdfunding stage for that, he worked with a company called Craft Services, who was a company that we worked for with our first crowdfunder for Sync. So if you guys are going down that path, think about working with Kickstarter. It doesn't have to be Kickstarter, it can be any of them, but you want a team. You want to build a team that can help you build that crowdfunder out. And Craft Services is awesome. You can find them by just Googling Enjoy Craft Services. And that's your little commercial for the day. But today's episode, we're going to talk with Taylor about his career. Started in documentaries, has done some shorts. Now he's working on his first narrative feature called Bampire. And it's very unique, as you will see in the episode. He'll talk about why, but we're very excited for him. We're really excited to see this all come to fruition. And I think that there's a lot of really good little tips and tricks and inspiration in this episode. I think you guys will really enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel like this one is really for the indie filmmaker. You guys, you know us. We are all about asking in-depth questions from fundraising to actual filmmaking. And Taylor spills the tea on all. He has a lot of tenacity, which we talk about today. He's making films just from Portland. He's not in LA, and he's still making.
He's not even in Portland. He's in Eugene now, so even Eugene, smaller,
Oregon,
even more out of town. Yeah,
real out there, but he's found a way to do his art, which is so, I know, important to us all, and find a way to do it in a way where he can keep making films. And he's had a lot of successful documentaries. We get into that, as Tessa mentioned, and I just think you guys are really gonna love hearing about how he created the concept for this feature and just some other inspirational ways to go about creating films that have used now public domain free characters from other stories. So it's really cool. I think it'll give you guys a lot of ways to think about those kinds of stories to tell, but also just overall, kind of getting into the indie filmmaking aspect of it, which we love. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy.
Taylor Morden of PopMotion.
Taylor, good. It's afternoon already or morning? Are you in LA? Where are you?
I'm in Oregon.
Oregon. Ayo, shout out Oregon filmmakers.
Love the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fun place for indie films, especially horror-esque indie film. I have another filmmaker out there, shout out, who is working on something up there. And he's like, yeah, the Pacific Northwest, man, those roads, those forests. Do you feel really inspired? And is that why you're still there, Taylor, and not here with us in LA? Tell us about your story. Is that where you grew up?
Partly. I grew up splitting my time between San Francisco and Oregon. Divorced parents, 80s, But I went to high school and college up here. I'm in the Eugene area, so it's sort of always felt like home. And then I've lived all over the place, but then just recently moved back. I don't think LA is for me. I know it's for a lot of people. Yeah.
No, and that's totally fair. Do you have we're always curious to speak to filmmakers outside of LA and see is there a film community where you're located, or are you just finding people just to come band with you together on projects? Like, how does that work when you're not in the LA bubble, Like, talk to us
Right.
about that. And did you go to
Yeah.
film school there? Like, was it where you went to school? Did you go to film? Like,
I
study
did
film and
not go to
stuff?
film school.
Okay.
I
Neither
have
did
met
we.
people who have gone to film school. I hear it's great.
Yeah.
But that was not available. I think at the time I went to the University of Oregon in the early 2000s. They have a film program now, but they didn't then. And my degree, I think, is in something called digital arts, which was like flash animation.
Okay.
And early 2000s internet programming.
Yeah.
It could not be more useless. So
I think that's how a lot of theater majors like myself feel. So
there you go.
I get it. But that goes to show that you don't need to go to film school. And that's not speaking against film school. Like, it's very valuable, but you don't absolutely need it to be able to have a successful film career. Carolina and I didn't go. I have a lot of friends that didn't go, and they're, professional filmmakers. That's all they do. They don't even have a day job anymore. So it's definitely possible. And then it also shows you, like, you don't need to be in a hub either to make film, and I would like to hear more about your film community up there, but just, you can make film anywhere as long as you can find the people to work with. You could ship them in from LA, or you can find them right there. There's people all over.
Yeah. I mean, the internet has made the world very small, right? So it's nice to be able to be a filmmaker based in Oregon. And I do mostly documentaries. This is my first narrative feature. And for the most part, documentaries, you have to go where the subject is anyway.
It's true.
So being in LA wouldn't help me that much. I'd just be paying a lot more in rent and then flying to wherever I need to fly to anyway. So it's been interesting. And I sort of, I've been a professional filmmaker for about 10 years now. And it never even occurred to me to move to LA. Like, it's always been possible because we've had video calls the whole time I've been doing it. I understand why 15, 20 years ago, maybe you did need to live in a hub. And to a lesser extent, if you want to be, a working sound person or a grip or something, or a PA, you have to be in a hub. But if you're creating your own projects, like I do, you be wherever you want, live a comfortable life and just fly in and do the job, because you can edit from anywhere and you can do pre-production from anywhere.
Exactly. No, I think that's an important distinction to make as far as like what role you're really trying to be in. And if it's more on the crew side of things and that's the work you're relying on, go to a film hub because
100%.
you need that.
Yeah.
But if you're
Or if you're
producing
an actor.
or an actor, it's like really great to then band with those people. But if you have the power to like write and produce and not even the power, but that's what you are excited about, then I think you can do that independently. So Noah, but is there a film hub where you are? Like, talk to us a little bit. Okay.
So we've been trying to build one up. I moved back to Eugene. I was living in Bend, Oregon, which is a very small town, for about 5 years, and trying to get a film community going there. And there is a little bit of one, but it's a very small town. And it's a lot of, wedding films and a handful of small commercial agencies and a lot of little islands of people like me who are making their money elsewhere and living in Bend. And I moved to Eugene a couple of years ago and got introduced to basically a burgeoning young film community that is really trying to do things. And I was very excited about that because I've always sort of wanted that. I came up playing in bands. I was a musician, and we had like the local scene, and the bands would help each other out. And we had this sort of arts community, and we'd all go to each other's shows and buy each other's CDs and all that. And I was looking for that in film. And I know a lot of people in the major hubs have their communities and their bubbles and their groups like that. But, in these smaller markets, it's very hard because there may only be 10 people who are doing anything in film. And if two of them don't get along, all of a sudden you have two warring factions of of film people. But we did start up. We're about a year into. I'm on the board of a nonprofit here that is trying to, promote film education and provide studio space for people and provide opportunities for young filmmakers. And we're very much trying to grow it. And it's actually gaining some traction. And it's, we're still in the early days of it, but it's happening. Portland obviously has a film community. It's great, but that's 100 miles from here.
Oh, see, I have no reference. I'm like, you're close
Yeah.
to Portland, probably. That's where my brain goes.
Oregon's one of those big states that only has one city people know about.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Eugene is, I would very much call it an up and coming film community, and a lot of cool stuff is being done here. And that's sort of how I met all the people that I got to work with on Bampire.
Amazing. And I want to give our listeners a little taste too, before we really get into Bampire, about what you've been up to. So, let's talk Blockbuster, let's talk Lost, and how that's kind of inspired you to go now this narrative route.
So I'm mostly known, if anybody's heard of me, no one has, as a documentary filmmaker. I had one hit. It was called The Last Blockbuster. It was on Netflix, top 10. Big deal. People saw it.
Yes. Top 10. I didn't know that. It was on Netflix.
Please.
Top 10 though. Yes.
Like this intro, honey, we heard of you. That's why I was like, oh, he's coming on the show. I've heard of The Last Blockbuster, and yeah, I still on my list. I need to watch it because how iconic. Like that was our way of getting movies. So yeah, I was absolutely curious to talk about how like you went about doing that and what inspired you to do that project. And it's so cool that it's a documentary. So I really love all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got into film through music videos because I was playing in bands, and music videos don't pay very much, at least at the scale I was doing it. But that led to, people knowing about this guy has a camera and can do stuff. So you book some commercial stuff, some corporate stuff, some weddings, some real estate. And I did all that for a long time in Washington, D.C. That's where I was based.
Okay.
Then I moved to Oregon, this small town, middle of nowhere. And I had the skill set, but there wasn't commercial work. And yeah, there's a lot of weddings, but there were 10 high-end companies that didn't need my help. I couldn't get anyone to take a meeting with me. I was trying to crack into the film community, and I said, here, I'm moving to town. I would love to meet you. If you need a PA, if you need anything, I'm coming to town and I want to help. Nobody wanted to chat. Nobody wanted to get coffee. Nobody wanted to do any of that. So I was trying to figure out how to do a career. And it sort of dawned on me that all the corporate work and commercials I had been doing are basically the same skill set as documentaries. And so
How so?
I know I was doing a one-man band. So I was setting up lights, sound, and shooting talking head interviews for a living.
That makes sense.
And B-roll, and then cutting it into these like 5-minute mini docs for nonprofits and educational organizations in DC.
Right.
So those are
like, okay, interview setup, one-man band. You know how to do the lights, and then it's just you and the camera directing with whomever you're speaking to. Totally
100%.
makes sense. Totally makes sense. Okay, that's really
cool. So I had
cool.
the skill set.
Yeah.
And I asked my wife, who was still working for a DC company, but we were living in Bend. I said, I've got the savings from shooting 100 weddings. I think I can stay afloat for about a year. What would you think if I did a documentary? Like tried to make a feature film?
What'd she say?
She said, you can have a year. Like we looked at the math and the bank account. She's like, do it for a year. Because our cost of living was pretty low. If you can make money with it, great. That's your job. If not, here's the application for Best Buy. You go work there. That was 7 years ago now, and I never had to get the job at Best Buy.
That's amazing.
5 features.
I love stories like this. 5 features.
5 feature docs.
5 feature docs.
And 1 narrative now.
Wow.
And a ton of shorts. I've always wanted to do narrative, and the limitations have always been budget and a cast and crew in the market, in Oregon. finding 20 people who want to make a movie is hard, or who have the time.
Right.
So it wasn't for lack of wanting to. It's just that I can pack up and go shoot a documentary basically by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
did. But
Yeah.
you can't make, I don't think you can make a narrative feature by yourself.
No.
I'm sure people have.
It's a
It is
village.
I could not imagine. I mean, we have a friend, Noam Kroll, who's done like kind of the one-man band for narrative features, but like you have to really know the ins and outs of everything. And even when you do, like that's so stressful. I don't know how anyone does that.
You still need a cast.
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
you need a cast,
Yeah.
you need sound, like you can't do it all. No.
Right.
Yeah. So that's so cool. Congratulations. I mean, it's just so inspiring because it's so hard out there. And I just think I love the tenacity you had that you're like, I'm going to go in a place where there's literally no one here that does film, but I'm going to like still apply myself and like apply yourself, honeys, apply yourself, because you still broke through. Like that is unbelievable.
It took a long time, and whatever broke through means it still barely pays the bills. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
Independent documentary is not like the big time. You're not. I still have that Best Buy application right over there. Ready to
Tear
go.
it up, Taylor. We are not looking back now. We are
No,
too
Best
into
Buy's
it.
going under.
Oh my gosh.
I'm curious too, with the last block. Let me try that again.
It's so
With
much
the
harder
last
to say.
blockbuster, it really is.
We didn't think of that. We only saw it written, and then I started doing press for it, and no one. It's hard for me to say, and I've said it maybe 10,000 times.
That's so funny. But with the last blockbuster, did you guys? I know you worked with our friends at Craft Services to do the crowdfunding for it. Did you guys fund it solely through that? Did you have like traditional investors? How did that all come together?
Yeah, so I had at that time I thought traditional investors were like a myth that people talked about, like where somebody, the dentist, the rich,
right.
It's always the
rich
dentist.
man. I think we got, and I want to be as accurate as possible, I think we got an optometrist to give us $500.
Okay.
Wow.
Everything.
Rolling the big bucks.
Yeah, I'm just
From
saying. And that was, I
ophthalmology.
think, to sponsor like a screening event.
Mm-hmm.
So
Aw.
I'm still barely able to comprehend the concept that there are people with a lot of money that want to invest in film, because I haven't met them. But what we did, so Last Blockbuster was actually my third feature, and I had crowdfunded every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The one right before that Craft Services also helped with the Kickstarter on, was a documentary about ska music. So your Real Big Fish, your No Doubt, your Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. And that one did very well financially. Most people haven't heard of it, but it was indie. We own the rights. So I was basically sort of, I've been carrying over that same $10,000 into every project. That's the seed money. Right. So this movie did okay. So then the next one, we spend that and it does a little better, et cetera, et cetera. So Blockbuster was all crowdfunded, and then a lot of, my partner on that, my producer Zeke, he and I just we split every dollar from the beginning to make it. We were lucky in that we lived in this small town that happened to be where the last blockbuster in the world was. We weren't paying for travel.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, we started it years before. There were 12 left in the world, and one of them was in our town. And so we had 3 years of footage documenting what it was like to be one of the last ones. And we happened to be in the right place at the right time when all the rest closed, and it got all this hype and it blew up, and and now it's this tourist location. It's, home video mecca for people to go visit the copy of Paul Blart 2 on the shelf.
Wow. I love when stuff lines up like that too. That's amazing.
No, it's literally fate. Like, call it what you want to call it, but that just sounds so like serendipitous, and what a unique thing to share with everyone. I mean, and you documented it for a few years. Like that's just always blows my mind. Like how it took years for it to line up for you. And then I mean, it probably was a little sad too to see all the other blockbusters go. Be like, where's
It was a matter of when we started, you know, we filmed at the one that was in our town, and the manager there, she connected us with the other 11, and we would call, and you know, there were, I think, 3 in Oregon, 4 or 5 in Texas, and all the rest were in Alaska.
Okay.
Which,
whoa.
that tracks, right? We thought for sure the Alaska ones will outlast because they don't have the internet, right? It's obvious. They didn't have the broadband for streaming, so everybody was still renting DVDs.
Okay.
That made sense. But we would call and say, okay, we've raised just enough money. We've scraped together $500. We can come to Texas and film at your store. And the manager on the phone would be like, oh no, you're too late. We close on Wednesday or something like that. And that kept happening. They were literally, we couldn't raise money fast enough to do our doc covering all 12. So we ended up only having footage at this one store. And then, you know, through the course of tenacity and right place at the right time and dumb luck, it ended up that it was the story, was this one store.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Again, so faded. I love it.
I'm curious, continuing on the vein of crowdfunding. So you've continued to fund your films through crowdfunding. Like, again, we'll get to Bampire very soon. But, you know, I think for us, Carolina and I, we ran a successful crowdfunding campaign through Kickstarter with Craft Services as well for our first feature film last year. And, you know, we're always worried of like, well, for the next one, whether it's, you know, for post for this film or for the next film, like, are people going to want to give again? Can we raise that much money again? And clearly you have had success with that. Like you said, it's like always like the $10,000 seed money, you know? So talk to us a little bit about that, because I know that was a fear of ours, and it's inspiring to see that it can work more than once.
Yeah. Well, I hate it every time. I hate going into it.
Of course.
As you well know, having done it, the feeling of begging everyone you've ever met for money, that never gets better, in my opinion. I think this Bampire one will be my 5th crowdfunding campaign, and it's awful. It feels terrible. But I support other people's campaigns. I understand that this is how indie film, it has to work almost if you want to make anything. Because I've also been, you know, the Blockbuster movie got me an agent, and it got me in the room, and I do all these pitch meetings.
Yeah.
I have no one buys anything when I tell them, here's the idea, it's going to be great. They say, okay, go make it and maybe we'll look, right? I can't work that way. I have this like punk rock DIY, you know, like just make the record and sell it out of the trunk of your car.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the major label to sign your band. And that just carries through to this way of like, you know, it sucks that crowdfunding is the way that people at my level, at our level, have to pay for things.
Right.
But at the same time, it's amazing that it exists because it does afford this opportunity. And I try not to think of it as much as, you know, going out hat in hand and begging for money, because while it is that, it is also, we do a lot of physical goods. So it's also just pre-selling DVDs. Like if I sell 1,000 DVDs, and I know it's 2024, but I'm a Blockbuster video guy, so physical media is still very strong. But, you know, it's like if I sell 1,000 DVDs in advance, I can pay to make the movie or pay to just produce the DVDs. If we sell, you know, a certain number of digital copies in advance, it affords us to make the thing. And clearly there's a supply and demand thing here where people want that.
Right.
You know, it's not just me saying, please give me money, I want to make art. It's like, I'm going to make this thing that you might want. I'm going to let you buy it in advance. And then we have a relationship. And I do see a lot of people coming back campaign after campaign because, I mean, I've never not delivered, right? I know a lot of Kickstarters, they take your money and it falls apart because of reasons, sometimes malicious, sometimes not. But I've always delivered what I say. You know, if I promise you a DVD or a VHS copy, we're making it and we're mailing it to you. And then also you have this sort of, like I said, relationship with these people who contribute and they feel like they're a part of the thing. So not only do you have 1,000 people who bought your movie in advance, you have 1,000 people who feel like they're a part of it, who are going to tell all their friends, who are excited about this project. You know, maybe their name is in the credits, or maybe they just, you know, are the only person who has this limited edition t-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, it's a long way of saying it's really great and it's really terrible. And at this point in my career, I haven't figured out a better way.
Thank you, Taylor, for like sharing that, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, as I like to call it, because it's exactly how we feel. But I like help mentor filmmakers on this and the importance of that. This is your way of independently owning your story, first of all, because
Yes.
even if you do get Mr. Big Bucks or Mrs. Big Bucks with all the money to give you, they might want to control like your story. They might not get your story. I mean, we've pitched before and people don't always get it. And then it's like, well, then I don't want those people to give me money because they're just gonna want to change things or have, you know, their say in it. So it feels deflating, but it should be looked at as something empowering. I always try to put my positive spin on this, you know, this fam, because you got to go into that mindset. You got to value your work. And I think the biggest thing to me at least, when it comes to making a film, is that you are hiring other creators. You're giving work to other creators to tell your story as well. So I just always like let people know it's not money really to us, even though it looks like it's going just to me and Tessa, but it's really not. You're allowing other people to do their art and to give them work as well. So I think that's really empowering.
That's a big part of it. The money, you know, I try very hard, and I keep the cost of living low. And if we raise, like on the last Blockbuster, we raised about $40,000. All of that money went into the movie, and I don't make a dime unless we then sell that movie later, right? So we're just gambling, putting it off to the future. Like, okay, great, now we have a budget to make the thing. If, you know, enough people rent it on Amazon, or if, you know, all the lottery tickets work out and you get a Netflix deal, which doesn't pay what you think it pays, but it does help. You know, that's when I get paid. So it's not like we're doing crowdfunding. I mean, just speaking for myself, I don't know how other people do it, but I'm not doing a crowdfunding to like buy a car. You know, that's not, that's not the vibe. It's to make the thing. And then the beauty of the crowdfunding is then you own the thing, right? Nobody else paid for it. Nobody else, you know. So I have this small production company, but we own like 4 movies outright because we didn't take other people's money to make them. I mean, we took other people, like, you know, people.
Right.
Companies.
Right.
No, and we found that too. Like even now, as we head in towards like distribution, we're close to finishing our film in post. We did have to. Thank you. We did fundraise again for more funds for post too. So again, like we understand how it feels to like go back to back, but you do the work, it does pay forward. You know, it really does. So as we head towards distribution now, I'm curious because you've landed a Netflix deal and have done other successful films. You know, something we're looking at and researching is, you know, just because you end up on a Netflix doesn't mean that's always going to be like, yes, this big buyout and you're going to see so much from it. And also I think there's just some myths that I feel like you can help debunk a little and whatever you feel like comfortable sharing. But in terms of, why it is a great platform to be on and why like it could be not so great if that's the only place it's on, getting potentially lost in a lot of films. Like I know with the Last Blockbuster, you mentioned it got on the top 10. So that really puts you in the forefront. I'm always looking at the top 10. Who isn't, So if you could.
First thing that comes up.
Yeah, exactly. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of that.
Sure.
About that.
My favorite thing to tell people that I think is right on the edge of what I'm allowed to say is the fact that in at least our Netflix contract, it states, I can't tell you what's in our Netflix contract.
I had a feeling.
There's a gag order in there that I probably shouldn't say is in there, but
I think we all know that because no one can talk about it.
No one talks about
no one
numbers.
Talks about it. No. But do you know your numbers? That's the other thing. I feel like
yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Netflix is a closed system. We got extremely lucky in that the month our movie launched. First of all, Netflix, I don't know what I can say. They negotiated us to a number that is like, sure, we'll take your movie. Like, okay, and they said no twice before they said yes.
Whoa.
So we were like, okay, yeah, we pitched directly. When it was rough cut, we sent it again as a finished film, and we got a hey, no thanks. We then signed with a distributor. They pitched it, and it first got like a lukewarm maybe, and then a week later we got I guess a different person was very excited about it or something.
Yeah. They're the film nerd. You know that they're about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So tenacity. Well, I think it took a long time for anyone at Netflix to get the joke that Blockbuster being on Netflix is like that would go viral, because it did end up going quite viral. The sort of
totally
the narrative was Netflix gets the last laugh or destroys Blockbuster, blah blah blah, and everyone assumes it was produced by Netflix. We have so many bad reviews because it was a $40,000 movie where people are like, this really doesn't look as good as the stuff Netflix usually makes. I'm like, yeah, Netflix didn't make it. But we got really lucky in that the month we launched, and this was in 2020 during the pandemic, so a lot of people were watching Netflix, there happened to be a Nielsen rating audit of Netflix numbers while we were in the top 10. And they only gave out numbers for things in the top 10.
Wow.
So the only way that I know of that you can get Netflix numbers is through some crazy fluke like that. So we did, I think we extrapolated just in the 4 days we were in the top 10. It was something like 12 million people watched it or something, which is, and that was just for a week. So we were in there for 4 weeks, and I don't know. And that's me remembering from 4 years ago. So this is a podcast, but don't quote me on that. But the only reason we got any numbers at all was through this fluke, through a third party, through the Nielsen ratings, right? Which is how people used to get their numbers.
Wow.
And it did, I can tell you, we were on Amazon and iTunes and all the other platforms for 3 months before the Netflix deal started. That's
okay.
Most distributors want a window, TVOD, then SVOD, then AVOD.
Right.
Our TVOD window was okay. We did get some good press. We had a good publicist. It worked. And then the day we hit Netflix, our rental numbers went to 0 and just stayed there because it's free. Now it's free on Netflix. So it is, one downside is if you do get a Hulu or a, Freevee, and things have changed now because everything has commercials. This was 4 years ago when it meant people could watch it for free. But if you do get one of those deals, you do have to sort of factor in, what were you going to make in rentals, and is it worth it? Is the number they're going to pay you to be on a free streaming service more than you would have, because you think about even ad-based, right? On Tubi or Freevee or any of these platforms, the number of plays you have to get to make the $2 you get for one Amazon rental is in the thousands, right? Or in the hundreds, because they're paying pennies.
Right.
And you make $2 from one person watching your movie for $3.99 on Amazon because they take half. But it's just very simple economics. And, you know, sometimes I do lay awake thinking about what we would have made if 12 million people had paid to watch the movie.
Right.
But then it's kind of, you know, half dozen, six the other, whatever that saying is. But because it's, you know, yeah, you're going to make more money from these rentals because people are paying individually to do it. But then are you going to get more views when it's free? So then, you know, if you have thousands of people watch it because it is free, then you might be making more than the amount of people that would pay to rent it. So it's, yeah, it's very, it's kind of, you have to take the chance because you don't know really where the viewership is going to be.
Right. And I'm very grateful, don't get me wrong, being on Netflix did more for my career, I guess, than any number of Amazon rentals would have done.
I was going to ask, like, hindsight 2020, do you feel like it was a great decision for your career and, like, you know, where it's led you to keep producing more features?
Yes, almost 100% positive. The only downside is that now when I go to make my low budget independent documentaries, people assume I have a lot lot
Yeah.
because
they
they're
think
like, I saw your movie on Netflix. You're fine.
like,
you don't need my $20 on Indiegogo. Actually,
well, that's why we spill the tea here. So, you know, to get people aware of like what it's like to, just because you land on a major platform, it's not, unfortunately, it's not like your golden ticket to the Willy Wonka factory that, you know, it's like, yay. But I do think, like you said, it really does help you put you on the map, get you into meetings, right? Open doors, like be taken seriously because of that. So that's really, really awesome. So that's the golden ticket.
Yes. I mean, I'm here right now talking with you because of all this, right?
Exactly.
Well, you get to meet great people. That's fun.
Yeah.
We love independent filmmakers, and we know, like, we try to not make our podcast like all about someone crowdfunding their film, but also like if we can give filmmakers that we think are super dope a platform to talk about, you know, that what they're working on. We're all learning, we're all like figuring out how to do this, and this is the space to be in. So let's talk about Bampire.
Yeah.
Can you please share with us the log line, the story, the inspiration, and then I want to get into some nitty ditty copyright laws. So let's, you know.
Oh, fantastic!
Ooh.
Happy to talk about Bampire. So, Bampire was written by a friend of mine in this local community named Zoe Wassman. She sent me a script, and people send me scripts because they think I can make movies happen, which is false. But I read it, and it was both like a really good story. It had really cool stuff in it. You know, I'm a 80s, 90s movie fan, and if something has practical effects and VHS and all this stuff, because the movie takes place in the 90s.
Okay.
They basically had me at the 90s, but
pitching to Taylor, 80s, 90s genre film. Cool. Awesome.
Listen, I have a brand and it stops at the year 2000.
We're into it.
Right. So yeah, it was sort of brought to me as like, here's this movie we think we could make. A lot of it takes place in the woods. We live near the woods. We think we can cast it locally and make it for, maybe $10,000. And I was like, wow. And then I read it and sort of dove in. I'm like, no, you can't. I think, if everybody works for free, sure. You definitely can. And that's possible around here because nobody makes features.
And people are excited.
But very few people. And when you call a location, no one has ever asked them if you can make a movie there before. It's
Yeah.
not like LA where they're
Right.
like, yeah, it rates $12,000 a day and that's it. So it was exciting. But basically the log line is I suck at these.
You can just tell us what the story is about. I hate when someone's like, tell me your log line. And you're like, can I just tell you my story? So
Right.
what-
Well, it's Bampire, right? So it's a Bambi horror movie. And it's called Bampire because that has a better ring to it than Bambi weredeer that lives in the woods and it kills people that piss off nature, right? So it's a throwback horror movie where, you know, a professor takes 5 community college students out into the woods to research a newly discovered fanged deer species that's based on a real, you know, the musk deer that I've seen pictures of that live
What?
not around here. But there are deer with huge fangs that live in the world, and they look like
Just
monsters.
Googling.
And
Woo!
yeah, Google
Woo!
musk deer.
I just Googled it, fam. It is
It's wild.
wild.
So that's
Okay.
basically, it's like, well, what if somebody saw one of those here in the Pacific Northwest? People would go out to study it. And then what if that turned out to be like a werewolf creature that kills people that come poking around where they shouldn't?
I love that.
I freaking love this. This is amazing. Okay. So Zoe, the writer,
Yeah, producer.
shout out. So I love the story. And where Fam was talking about like the copyright laws and stuff was because recently there, as of now, around like 13 public domain characters that, you know, crafters, writers, filmmakers can actually use. And, you know, for those of you who don't know what the public domain means, I have a little cheat sheet on it, but it means that no one individual owns the property and that the copyrights have then expired. So instead of it considered owned by just the public and anyone, it's in the public can use it for, you know, whatever they like instead of that one person who originally like created it. And so they copyright typically lasts about, you know, the length of the creator's life. So if it was William Shakespeare, it would last his life plus 70 years. And then, so in 2023, the works published in 1927, and earlier public domain entered, you know, public domain. Am I making sense, y'all? Mm-hmm. Okay, amazing. So there are currently about 13 public domain characters, which include Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, The Little Mermaid, Rapunzel, Snow White, Cinderella, Aladdin, you know, Pete the Cat, Peter Pan, Winnie the Pooh, which I struck a conversation with you, Taylor, about like this slasher Winnie the Pooh situation. And then like Bambi, Scrooge, the list goes on, my friends.
Yeah. But most recently, Mickey Mouse.
And most recently, Mickey Mouse.
That just happened. And people have already announced horror movies based on Mickey Mouse.
Of course.
It's what we do.
I just love that we're like, let's take this seemingly innocent character and like really just go dark with it. I mean, do you know what Zoe's like thoughts were? I just feel like she's not making a slasher film. Like there is this other element to it about like protecting, you know, nature and stuff that I think is really cool. But then also
it's definitely more thematically a Bambi movie than literally a Bambi movie. In terms of, you know, so here's the fun thing. Bambi, the Disney movie, is not in the public domain. Mm. It's the underlying book that came out years before, which means we can have a character named Bambi. We can have deer. We can have themes of, you know, hunters and the woods and, you know, encroaching on territory and how important it is to preserve nature. Those can be themes, and it's all tied back to the book. We cannot have a bunny rabbit named Thumper. Mm-hmm. We cannot have a skunk named Flower, and we cannot draw Bambi in any way that looks like the Disney version of Bambi.
Okay.
So it's very, you know, and it's the same thing that's happening now with Mickey Mouse. The version from Steamboat Willie is in the public domain. not the
Right.
version that we all know with the white gloves
Mhm.
and the red. It's the black and white, no gloves, doesn't talk, only whistles.
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse that we can all put on t-shirts and sell and nobody can sue us.
Mhm.
So it is a tricky thing, and we have gotten advice from people who know what they're talking about. Please do not take my words as legal advice when you're making your royalty
No,
free
everyone should do the
public
research.
domain film, but like this is
Yeah.
the reason there are so many movies based on Shakespeare, right?
Right.
Because it's been in the public domain for a very long time, and anyone can go make Hamlet.
Mhm.
Facts. Straight facts. And I was going to say, like, a lot of the characters I was referencing come from the Brothers Grimm storytelling
Right.
of it. So that's really, those are, like you said, the specific characters, not like the Disney cutesy versions that we
Right.
know.
Like you can make a Little Mermaid movie, but she can't have red hair and a purple bra and a seagull friend named Scuttle. That's
Yeah.
just not part of it. Like there are rules, and Disney is very good at sort of differentiating their versions and then fiercely protecting them.
Mhm.
Mickey Mouse, that 70 years or whatever the limitation was, that was up a while ago, and they passed like new extensions to be able to keep it from entering the public domain longer
Mhm.
than it normally would have, because Disney owns everything and they control the entire universe of entertainment. And I'm working on a documentary right now about Lost,
Mhm.
the TV show,
Mhm.
that is
Okay.
also owned by Disney. So I feel like I'm going to get a stern talking to one of these days from a mouse.
Of course. That's funny. I did not know they were owned by Disney, but I'm also somehow not surprised.
Everything is.
Yeah.
Everything is. They scooped up, Marvel, Fox, what's not Paramount is not owned by Disney.
But
Is that the only
they're
thing?
looking for acquisition. So
But they're in talks.
yeah, they're in talks with everyone. They're put up their price and they're gonna shop around right now.
Naturally.
Insane. It's insane. But I think it's cool that, for anyone who's looking for inspiration and wants to look at some older works, this is of course not just these characters. Like, do your research if you're inspired. I know I'm inspired by older women's writing and like their works, and so I'm always like curious, like, can I like use an inspiration or a quote here? And a lot of times you can if it's past,
Yeah, if it's old enough.
if it's old enough. So I think that's a really cool take. And what, I guess, when you were pitched the story, other than it being 90s, what else about it like really made you excited to work on it?
Yeah, I mean, so as a really fiercely independent filmmaker, and I knew we wouldn't have money, or we're going into this like, what can we just make? The idea of the like all practical effects, all like
Love
doing what we
practical effects.
can, and then
Yeah.
there's this aspect where we got pretty far down the script and we did a bunch of revisions back and forth, where I had some notes based on the practicality of making this thing, and we got to the point where we realized there were so many animals in the script that first we talked about puppets and we talked about costumes and prosthetics and how are we
Right.
I can't train a deer to do the things we needed. It says on page 62 the deer does this, and I don't know how to do that. So what we ended up coming up with, which is part of why we're needing to crowdfund money now, is we shot this thing with the full intention of hand animating, not in a Disney style, more in a Ren and Stimpy style, but basically Roger Rabbiting this thing. So when people interact with animals, we filmed clean plates and we have a 2D animator drawing the animals into this, because I figure one gimmick is not enough. We need all the gimmicks, because indie film is so crowded and so insane, and there might be 22,000 horror movies that come out right around the same time ours does.
Yeah.
So literally anything we can do to have any kind of an edge or any any good luck with a press release. Like, it is so hard to make an independent film and to get anyone to watch it.
Right.
So we were like,
What's going to help you stand out, and having
what
something
can we
like
do?
this?
Well,
Yeah.
it's based on Bambi. That's something that'll get one BuzzFeed article, right? We got a few fun, like, retro cult film cameos from cool actors. And then we're like, well, what if we do cartoons? To the best of my knowledge, no one has done this.
Yeah.
No one has done a half live action, half animated indie throwback horror based on not a Disney movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's such a good idea. Like you said, it's so, unique. Like, you see, excuse me, animation and live action come together sometimes, but like to do it in this, again, like retro way, like you said, like 2D animation, Roger Rabbit style, like you just don't see that. And I'm curious, how you said the animators will kind of draw over these cells, but in the filming process, like how did you get the actors did you have like a almost stand-in, like what, how did all of that work?
Yeah, we did have teddy bears on set occasionally for eye lines. A lot of times, and this is what really drew me to it, was I could see, when we were in pre-production, the wheels turning of like how fun it would be as an indie film person who's just like obsessed with how they used to make movies. Where I'm like, we're just going to tie a fishing line to this thing and it's going to move. And then in post, we're going to add the animal that moves the thing. And people are going to be like, wow, how did they move the thing? Fishing line. It's always fishing line.
Always fishing line.
But to me, that's what's exciting about making movies, is doing magic tricks, right? That we can pull off this thing that's not budget dependent. It's just creativity dependent. It's tenacity. It's, like, I shot so many empty plates of just a leaf, and then the leaf moves, and later there's going to be a bug on that leaf and it's going to make a face because it hears something coming, or whatever the shot is. It was just so fun to do it that way, as opposed to, fully doing those shots in CGI, which can be done probably cheaper than animating at this point. Or just cutting them out, because that's the other choice that low budget filmmakers, I have a lot of friends that make low budget indie movies, and a lot of times the scripts are great, and then you go in and you have to cut out 10 of the coolest things because you can't afford to do them. And we were just like, well, what if we went for it anyway? And we really tied our hands because we've shot most of the movie. Like, principal photography is almost done, and we're really locked into this animation, and animation is not cheap and it's not fast. So our plan was always shoot as much of the movie as we can. Then, we can go to crowdfunding. We can show it to investors, because I hear that might be a thing. And then maybe we can pay to finish the animation, and then we'll have something really, really cool. So that's sort of where we're at with it, is we've shot a ton of the movie. We have, killer performances by great actors, but a lot of the frames are missing the deer or the bear or the bug or the bird or whatever is in it. But the potential is there, and I'm so excited, really excited about it, because it is different, and it's. I think it's going to be really cool. I know it's not for everybody, because it's like a hard R indie horror comedy with cartoons in it, which is not for anybody, but
it's for a lot of people, actually. A
that's
lot of people are going to love that in the horror space,
like,
for sure.
We just, killed ourselves to make this thing because we wanted to see it.
Yeah. And I think too, that makes something really unique for your crowdfunding is, at this point, you're crowdfunding not just to make a film, but like specifically to like get the animation in, and I mean, I'm sure it's going to go to all aspects of it, but like, that's an exciting, different thing for people to be like, oh, okay, this isn't just going to some indie film that, like, okay, I don't know, sure, this guy seems great, but like, this is a special, unique thing that you're not seeing every day, that they get a chance to fund this brand new thing. And, and I think that personally, I would find that really exciting if I saw this, just on social media or on Indiegogo or whatever. And Sure, I try to give to indie film, but of course, we're all filmmakers, we're all broke. So most of the time it's just like to the indie filmmakers that are my friends, that I have that
Yeah.
connection to already. And this is something super unique that I think I would be enticed to give to because it's got that different edge.
Yeah,
That's really what we were hoping for.
Yeah.
Yeah, to echo on that, I just think also the fact that you have gotten so far into like shooting it already, that is just such a great leverage point, like to like really draw attention. It's a very specific ask, like people understand it, like you could have stuff to show for it. So it's just yeah,
Right.
it is a truly exciting time. Like congrats on getting this far. And I think your thoughts on it is like absolutely right. Like you have what you need so far, so of course you're gonna finish it. Like you've already gotten this far, so that's so incredible.
Hopefully.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
And that
come
is
on, some
something
animation, Taylor. We got this. Like,
I'll just learn how to do it myself. I'll just spend
yeah.
another 4 years animating.
What I tell myself, I'm like, worst case, I'll do it.
Worst case, you don't want to see my animation. It's just a stick figure that moves across the screen. I had to do
It could be actually creepier. Like,
yeah, I've had to do some temp animation to send to the animator, and it's literally just like flip art of whatever the animal is, and in DaVinci you can make it move a little bit. It's really rough to watch these scenes with like cartoon mouse.
Yeah.
But that is a really good sort of tip that I would offer to anyone who is trying to crowdfund something is if you can shoot any of it first, people are more likely to get on board a moving train than to help push you out of the station. So if you say, look what we're doing, here's an example. Every one of my crowdfunding campaigns, I've had essentially a trailer to show people because I sort of self-funded the first bit. So like in a documentary, we do one trip to LA to film one batch of interviews, and then we can cut a trailer that's representative, and we say, here's what the movie is, instead of just telling people.
Right.
I think that really helps, and I've had enough success with crowdfunding to sort of just state as a fact that really helps.
Hell yeah.
Just showing people what you're doing instead of telling them. And maybe it's just like I'm terrible at pitching things, but I've had a lot of luck with showing people and no luck pitching,
I
anything.
love that. I love that. Especially, I think it's a great tip for someone who has like zero community, zero like anything to show, that if you can, I know it's so hard because it's like, well, I'm broke too, by the way, so I can't just like fund this. But if you set aside a goal, a savings goal, whatever you got to do, call up grandpa, whatever you got to do to like self-fund a little bit and do something. And then you, at that point, would have built a team. I always say, start your social media, that journey on there. And then like, I think this is a really smart way, is like, if you really have nothing like to really show, to prove to just strangers, or like, bridge a community by doing some of that work yourself up front to already, no, I do have something going on here. Look, I have a team. Like we've already done this. Hey. And then you have more the guts. I don't know. What's the Jewish word? The
chutzpah, right? Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Honorary Jew. To like just give to the world. And I think that's absolutely incredible that you've been doing that. It's not bad pitching. I think if anything, it's like a way to start the conversation. We all love a little conversation starter on a date. When you're talking to someone, it's like, I got nothing going on, but like, date me. It's like, well, ew. No, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. We're recording this on Valentine's Day. So I'm just thinking like, it's always, I feel like if you are a person who needs more confidence, right? Not everyone are like, a lot of people will resonate with you, Taylor, about not feeling like they're super confident to be like, yeah, give me all this money. And neither are we. But if you don't have that, I think, again, showing something you've already done can give you that confidence, can help you tell your story. So I just want to spill a little tea on that.
And I think too, to be extra clear about it, like for those of you listening, like a trailer is fantastic. If you can put together a trailer or a sizzle or whatever, a proof of concept, you know, for that specific thing that you're raising money for, like that's the best case scenario. That really shows off like, hey, this is already coming together. If you're not able to do that for whatever reason, having, you know, examples of past work, like Carolina, I think was alluding to, is, you know, like to show that, hey, you know, we need your money to start with this project, but we've accomplished this in the past. So know that it's going to be at least this good, if not better. And if you don't have either of that, if you guys are really just starting out, there's still things you can do to prove like, hey, at least I've got the vision, which is, you know, maybe a photo shoot. Like Carolina and I did that for our characters for our feature. That was like the first thing we did to show off just like the aesthetic of it. You know, even like a lookbook that's like, you know, this
Not
is
on
what
iPhone,
I'm trying.
by the way.
Yeah, do it on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a camera. You know, anything that you have to prove like, hey, I've got this vision. This is what it's going to look like, you know, all of that helps. Every visual, people are visual, it helps.
Even like a Ripple-matic, you know, just pull clips from similar things that, you know, make a sizzle. You don't have to shoot anything to make a sizzle.
That's what we did. Yeah. In our campaign pitch, we like, of course, introduced ourselves, but our sizzle was just picking up things that have already been shot and like the same with the same tone. And there's so much out there, but to utilize, and it's, you don't have to go shoot this whole thing. But if it helps, if you're like trying to build your team, your community, shoot a scene. Like if that's all you can afford, if you can, and maybe that will help like start a conversation if you feel completely like, okay, I did the sizzle and no one still cares. Well, like, okay, it's okay to fail. Like then you just ask yourself, what can I do better? You know? So I feel that it's been really cool to talk to you, Taylor. I had no idea, like it's just really inspiring that you can still fundraise to this day and it still sucks, but it still is effective. So I think we are taking that away from it. Like it doesn't mean you haven't made it or anything. It just means like, okay, this still allows me to be really independent, own my shit, and like do the things I want to do. Yeah. So that's really cool.
And before we share with our listeners how they can, you know, follow Bampire and get involved in all of that, I do have one other question about the process of making it. Because like you said, animation is expensive. You know, it's a lot. And it's something that we don't really see nearly as much of, I feel like, in independent film because of that fact, you know? So for you guys, is this, I think you mentioned when you were saying you have to send like the clip art and stuff to the animator. So I'm assuming you have an animator you're already working with. Like how did that process work? You know, were they involved from the beginning? Did they help you figure out how to shoot these things to later be able to insert the animation? How did all of that work?
That's a great question, and I'm sure there's a right answer that I don't know. What happened is we had a window because we live in the Pacific Northwest of weather that we could shoot the movie in. It was very much like if we don't shoot this, the bulk of it last September, we have to wait till next June or something because it rains here a lot. And it doesn't rain when you want it to. So you can write right into the script and it doesn't.
Of course.
Why doesn't it work that way? I'm trying to figure it out.
This is why people shoot movies in LA.
Yeah.
Literally why that happens is because most places weather will kick your butt. But we basically had the idea of the animation, and I have enough, you know, I've watched enough DVD special features. I've watched The Making of Roger Rabbit a bunch of times, and Cool World, and all these great examples. The Paula Abdul video where she's dancing with a cat. I was kind of obsessed with those things as a kid, and just sort of that was my film school was DVD special features, and so I'm familiar enough with how to do it in terms of, you know, framing a shot with negative space where it's going to go. And I storyboarded everything. So there wasn't a, you know, getting to set and wondering like, well, where are we going to put the creature or the thing? It was all planned in advance. We did not have an animator on board when we were shooting, so there wasn't anyone to consult with.
Okay.
And we went through this twice because there was a long time when it was going to be puppets, and we were talking to a puppeteer, and it was just like the main difference being we would have had to have the money up front for puppets.
Makes sense.
And do it, you know, on the day. We have to do it on the day, but the cartoons could come in later. So the back and forth has really been, you know, I knew a few animators, and I knew because I worked with animators on documentaries, because that's just, you can just put animation wherever you want in those. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I had a friend who did like kind of the style we were looking for, the grittier, creepier, like he gets the horror vibe. He's a horror filmmaker. His name's Josh Stifter. He was on the Robert Rodriguez reality show Rebel Without a Crew. He's one of the people that made a movie in 7 days on that. And that's sort of where I know him from. Not that I was on it, but I watched it. And the internet's a wild place. You can just meet whoever you want.
I know, right?
So I've known him for a long time, and I know he does this cool animation. So basically, I just pitched him what there was to do and sort of felt out a budget. And we went back and forth and did some test scenes. And, you know, the process, he sort of taught me the process after the fact, which was, you know, okay, make a spreadsheet. Let's outline every scene. If it's, you know, some shots are fully animated, but a lot of them are animation over live action. So I have to edit the scene first, because you don't want to animate something and then cut it out. It's such a tremendous waste of time and money. So you really need to like put your little clip art animals in, cut the scene, and then send it off to be animated over the top of.
Gotcha.
So that's sort of the process, but we're learning as we go, because I've never made Roger Rabbit before. I don't know. We're figuring it out. It's working. The stuff I've seen is looking really cool, and
that's so exciting.
We're really hopeful. Like, it is something very unique, but because it's unique, it's not like I can turn to my other filmmaker friends and be like, when you did an animated horror live action comedy 90s movie on VHS, how did you do it?
Right.
Like, that doesn't exist. So
yeah.
Well, we love that you have all the tenacity today, Taylor, to tell us how you broke into Portland, how you're breaking all genres, it looks like. And we're just excited. We'd love to have you back on at some point to hear, like, you know, when you do score it, it's premiering. We want to know about it. We want to be back on to hear how, like, it all progressed, because this is so cool. Like, I think our audiences are really going to nerd out about it and hopefully leave inspired, and that's all we can ask for. It's like, and go and, you know, contribute $1 or $2 or more. Whatever you guys want.
Speaking of, yes, let's tell the listeners, because we are recording, listeners, this episode right before the crowdfunding campaign is going to launch. But by the time you listen to it, it will be up and running. So Taylor, tell our listeners, A, where they can follow the progress of the film, and B, where they can contribute.
Yeah. So, the movie's on Instagram and Facebook, because you have to do that if you're going to crowdfund. You should do it anyway.
Yeah.
We're at Bampire Movie, and that's vampire with a B. Bampire. It's not as clever as I wished it was, but I felt clever at the time.
I like it. It's short, sweet, catchy. It gets the point across. It's good. Yeah,
we've been told it does not get the point across, but
I immediately, it was like, I know what he's doing. But Great. You know, I'm not everyone, so we're a unique bird.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Vampire Movie on the socials, and vampiremovie.com should take you straight to the Indiegogo right now, where you can see the video that I'm currently editing that is done in the future when you hear this.
Yes.
Which will show you a lot of what we've done.
So exciting.
And we'll explain as much as we can about the project and how cool it is, and all the cool, you know, celebrities that are in it, and all the stuff that we've done already, and what we need your help for. And so vampiremovie.com, help us out. Get cool stuff. We got t-shirts and hats and DVDs and all kinds of neat stuff. We're making pogs because it's the 90s.
Yes. I have my old pog collection somewhere in my parents' house. Carolina, you were like just 2 years too young, I think. I saw you being like, what are pogs?
What are pogs? What is pog?
It's pog. But
fair.
So cool, guys.
Oh, and how long is the campaign running until?
Great question. I assume 30 days. I haven't looked at a calendar.
Okay.
Early April.
Okay, cool. Just to give our listeners an idea of how much time they have to support.
But the beauty of Indiegogo, and this is, if anyone out there is a Lost fan from television, that campaign is also still running because Indiegogo, if you hit your goal, which we really hope we hit our goal on Bampire as well, they let you keep it going. Yeah. It's called In Demand. So we're still selling pre-orders of DVDs for the Lost documentary on Indiegogo. So I'm going to have 2 campaigns live at the same time for the first time ever.
Amazing.
Wow.
But a lot of people ask why we went with Indiegogo over Kickstarter, and it's because of this sort of in-demand feature.
I was going to ask, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
wow.
For the Lost doc, that campaign ended in September of last year. It ended during the production of Bampire, which don't do that. If you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign, pay attention to it. Right. But that one ended then, and it's like raised another $20,000 since then.
Amazing.
By being available in demand because we've had some good press, and that's sort of the beauty of this. So yes, the Bampire campaign will end in early April, but if you're hearing this in June, check, it might still be up.
Amazing.
Pro tip.
Yes.
Love that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to check out both campaigns. And keep on going, Taylor. You are trotting down a really hot path. Wow, what an exciting conversation today. Happy Valentine's Day to us, fam. This was like really great, really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Is this
super fun? It's great to meet you.
Yeah.
I love
you as well.
Most podcasts don't get into the details of the filmmaking, and I like.
Oh, we want to know
everything.
We'd
love to break into, like, I mean, we're always here to share, like, to be a platform, like Carolina said earlier, to share, fellow filmmakers' work, promote, all that kind of stuff. But like, we want to know, like, what's deeper than that. We don't just want to be a commercial. Like, we want to talk about, like, the struggle and the rewards and all of that.
Into it.
Yeah.
Like. We love that. So I'm glad you enjoyed us today. We enjoyed you. Taylor, friend to the show. Welcome back anytime. And fam, go check out the campaign.
Thanks for listening to Femme Regard Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in every Friday for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals. We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can also join the Femme Fam on Patreon. For more on us, check us out at femregard.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.